So I've made $1 million 10 different ways, and I'm about to show you how making $1 million is not luck.
All right, let's get into it. Who wouldn't want to make a million? Who wouldn't want to get that bag? So let's react to this. Maybe we could learn a thing or two. Let's get going. By the way, this is Kev Elroy. I hope I'm not messing up his name. But this is Ken. Let's call him Ken. Let's get to it.
So the first way, which everybody knows, is through my property management company. So the very first thing that I did when I became an on-site property manager for somebody else is I started my own. And very quickly I learned that as I grew the company and I got to about 4,000 units, then my net was about $50,000 to $100,000 a month as I continue to grow. So my overhead grew, of course, but all I needed to do was grow the number of units that I was managing. So my very first $1 million business was a fee management company where I went out and found syndicators, just like a lot of you, people that knew how to raise money or people that didn't want to manage. I targeted the independent owner. I got as many of those accounts as I could, and I grew that business as fast as I could. I've had multiple businesses like that, and all of them produce anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000 net per month. Not to mention the fact of what the actual business is worth. The business itself is worth probably $5 to $10 million. The second,
I'm not doing too much talking because I'm learning as I'm presenting this. That's my first time watching this, by the way. So yeah, I'm learning.
Way I made $1 million is what I call 1 + 1 = 3. And that's simply by just buying a 144 unit building next to another 150 unit building and marrying them together. So through just that move, through buying 2 buildings and combining it to one.
Oh, I'm okay. I think I know what he's about to say, but
I was able to cut out about $300,000.
Exactly, because he could get the same management crew to work for both units. Like same management, same people that's doing the, what's they call this? Not the property management. The people that's fixing inside of the home if something goes wrong, whatever. I forget. Maintenance. Yeah, the same maintenance crew, and the list goes on. So he doesn't have to hire, like, let's say if he was going to get, like, he doesn't have to hire 2 group of employees. You could just get 1 group of employee.
Dollars in operational expenses.
Join my free work.
Oh my God. Guys, I got to upgrade my account. My bad for the ads. All right, give it a few. I'm about to skip this. Boom, it's done. Skip. Let me put the volume
Both
back
buildings had a manager. I only needed 1. Both.
See, exactly. Both. Yeah, if he had both buildings, he would have had 2 managers. But now since property 1 is next to property 2 and he combined them together, now you only have 1 property manager, 1 manager and 1 crew, basically.
Buildings had a marketing budget. I only needed 1 because what I did is I combined the 2, rebranded it into 1 property, into 1 294 unit property. So not only was I making cash flow, but I increased the value of the property by over $300,000 a month in positive cash flow, which equated to about $5 or $6 million in value itself. When you're able to increase your net operating income through growing your revenue or cutting your expenses like we did in this particular case, you actually create value. So I created $5 or $6 million of value in just this one move. And I call it 1 + 1 = 3. So the next one is I bought a 156 unit property with a 9-acre piece of vacant land next to it. So the intent was to develop the next piece, which I eventually did. I bought the 156 units, then I was able to develop about 148 more units. So together, when done, turned into about a 304 unit property. The best was I got the land for almost next to nothing because to the owner, it was deemed almost invaluable. So the cool part about buying an existing property and developing the second half is that now I don't have to build all the infrastructure. For example, I don't have to build another clubhouse. I don't have to build another fitness center. And all the common things that you might need on one property, you don't need on a second. So I was able to build just apartments on the second parcel and absorb the operations into the first parcel. Once we got a construction loan and built the 148 units, we did a cash out refinance on the entire project. So in other words, I bought the existing 156 unit property with existing debt, but then I had a construction loan on the second piece or the vacant property. I built that property, and then I brought the whole thing to the lender once it was stabilized, and we did a big cash out refinance. So all the money that I used to buy the 156 unit was all paid back once the property was fully built, and I had one loan on the 304 units, which paid all the investors back. And at that point, I was infinite. I had no cash in the property at all. That property made me millions just from doing that one move. Today, I still own that property. It's worth about $54 million, and I have debt of about 40. I have over 10 million of equity just sitting in that property. I've already been paid back. It cash flows, and I've got over $10 million in equity. The deal that I bought in Austin, Texas was a 250.
So majority of the way he's making money is with buying lands, real estate. But just keep on.
6-unit property that had washers and dryer rooms in all the units. So 256 units had washer and dryer hookups and rooms, but no machines. And so I saw it as a huge opportunity. So what we did was we bought 256 sets of washers and dryers. Now that might not seem significant to you, but if you think about each tenant was going down to some laundromat somewhere between $10 and $20 a week, they were spending on just getting their laundry done. So when I decided to buy 256 washers and dryers, I just put them in all the units for free. And the tenants were, of course, extremely happy. And then at the end of their lease, I started increasing their rents by $50 or $75 per month. Now, the reason why I could do that is because the tenant was already spending this money. In fact, it actually helped because now they had brand new washers and dryers in their units as opposed to carrying all their laundry down somewhere else. And so instead of paying somebody else, they were actually paying me through an increase in rent by just having washers and dryers in there. So if you take 256 units times $50 a month times 12 months, that equates to about $153,000. If you use a capitalization rate of, let's say, 5%, that's a $3 million value add. So by spending about $150,000 on washers and dryers, I was able to create over $3 million in value on just this one property.
That is smart.
And don't forget, the tenants all paid that back in just about 1 or 2 years through an increase in rent as their rents rolled over. So from a customer standpoint, I call this a net-net. In other words, by purchasing the washers and dryers and putting it in each unit, I actually made it more convenient and better for the tenant. And it made their lives easier because instead of taking all their laundry and going down to a local laundromat, they were actually paying me through an increase in their rents when I just bought the machines for them in advance. So this is a traditional value add strategy, but I call it a net-net because the consumer actually doesn't feel any increase in their expenses because they were already spending that money anyway, getting their laundry done somewhere else. The fifth one is what I call change of use. So this is when you find a piece of property and change the use. In this particular case, I started buying apartments in Las Vegas, in Scottsdale, in Portland. And what we would do is we would buy apartment buildings for about $100,000 a unit. Now, this is 20 years ago. And I would sell them as condos for $200,000 a unit. So the math seems rather obvious. So I'll just focus on what I did in Las Vegas. I bought 2 properties there. One was 480 units and the other was 376 units.
I'm not saying anything because, like I said, I'm learning. So we watching together.
They were both apartment buildings and they were both about $100,000 a unit. 856 units, so I bought those for about $85 million. Now the goal, of course, is to sell all of those off as condos. And easy math is $171 million in condo sales. Buy 2 apartment buildings for $85.6 million, sell them off as condos as $200,000 a unit at a total sales price of $171 million. So how do you take an apartment building and sell them off individually? It's mostly legal. You have to put a condo map on the whole project, create CC&Rs and bylaws and all the things. It's mostly all legal. Now, instead of having one title for, let's say, one 480 unit project, I actually have 480 titles. So essentially, each unit, whether it's a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom, all has its individual title. So almost all of it is legal. But the interesting thing is the consumer doesn't even see it. It's still the exact same property. So all I did was take an apartment building, take the word apartments off, put condominiums up, and then have all the legal work done so that now somebody can buy an individual unit. So yes, I had to set up an HOA and all that stuff, and I had to learn how to do all this. So when you're doing a condo conversion, of course, it's very different because you're going from a renter to a homeowner. So once you get through the legal, you of course have the renovations, and then you got to sell them to the public. And in this particular case, we were selling them to people that wanted to live there, but also just investors that wanted us to manage the renters. So they wanted to buy them as cash flowing passive income. So those were our two buyers. So once we converted the apartments to the condos and put all the legal work in place, we started the renovations and we started the sales. At the end result of this whole project, we profited a little bit over $30 million on both projects when we sold out. I learned that there were two problems. Problem number one was that the investors wanted people to manage their individual units. So if I sold a $200,000 property to somebody that lived somewhere else, they wanted a local property management company. Inside of the condo conversion business, I created another business called Investor Management Services. This is a $6 million business that I created. So of the 856 units, about 500 of them were sold to individual investors. At the time, individual investors were flooding Las Vegas, and they all wanted to be there because each property cash flowed when you looked at the mortgage plus the rent. So what I decided to do was I decided to create a company called Investor Management Services. So I pre-charged each buyer $2,000 at closing. So if somebody came to buy one of my condos, I said, I can also offer you management services through Investor Management Services. You have to prepay 1 year's management fees. So I took the $2,000 for 1 year's management times the 500 sales, and I had $1 million of cash just by doing this, all pre-funded by the sales that I was already doing from the condo conversions. So now I had $1 million of cash sitting in this account. I had 500 investors that wanted renters, and of course I went back to my old roots of property management. So I set up all the accounting, all the property management, all the systems for Investor Management Services. So of that $1 million, I burned through about half of it. So I had about $500,000 in cash left, and I immediately started to look for a buyer of Investor Management Services, because the last thing that I wanted was actually to be in the condo management business. So I took Investor Management Services to a business broker, and I told them I wanted to sell off the company. And within a few months, I had an interested party from Canada. So I ended up selling that business for over $1 million. So I had $500,000 in free cash. I sold the business for $1 million. They were already buying the individual condos. Another opportunity came from on the sales itself. So you think about it, if I'm going to sell 856 condos in a market like Las Vegas, I have a choice. I can use an off-brand realty company to sell all of those, or I can create my own. So I decided to create my own. So I created a company called Condo Realty.
This is Wix Studio, the platform.
I'm sorry about the ads. I gotta upgrade my account. All right, we're about to skip it. Skip.
If the units sold for $200,000 each, and we had 856 units, each sale for the lister at 3% was about $6,000. So every single sale was about $6,000. So 856 units times $6,000 is just a little over $5 million. So there was $5 million on the table to whoever got the contract. Why not create a business and have profit from that too? The sales took about 3 years. And of course, there was a lot of work and the marketing and the management and the sales splits, and most of the money went to the actual salespeople and the broker. However, just from that move, I profited over $1 million just in that one move, but about $4 million of it just went to overhead and expenses. So that was another business I created inside of this condo conversion business. The interesting thing about that business is when it was all done and we sold all the units, I just wound it down and didn't do anything again with it. The eighth one is the renovation business, and that's the business inside of the condo conversion business. If you think about it, if you're going to buy an apartment building, there are going to be things that you want. You're going to want different flooring, you're going to want different appliances, you're going to want different paint, you're going to want different light fixtures. So all of those things are going to have to be done by a third-party contractor. So I started a renovation company. So each renovation was about $15,000 to $20,000 per unit. So again, $15,000 or $20,000 times 856 units, somewhere between 12 and 15.
What? That is
million. The individual contracts were about 8% of that. So there was well over $1 million in revenue just generating from coordinating, performing the renovations. I wanted all this stuff in-house. So for a lot of you that might be thinking this is a lot of work, imagine being able to be in control of the renovations, being able to be in control of the sales, being able to be in control of what the investor gets with the renter and the management. All of those things were calculated. Yes, I made money on them. Yes, I made over $1 million on each of those businesses. But the truth is, I wanted to control the process for the consumer.
Yeah, then he doesn't have to wait for nobody. He doesn't need approval from nobody. He doesn't need to, you see what I'm saying? It's like, imagine, yeah, you don't need no approval from no one. You don't have to wait to say, okay, when is he coming in to fix such and such? Oh, they didn't come today. I called him. Like, he doesn't have to go through that process because he owns everything. So complete control of the entire process from A to Z. That's very smart.
From the beginning to the end. So those were 4 businesses that I made over $1 million on just in a period of about 3 years. And that's not even including the ones that I did in Oregon or Arizona. That's just the ones that we did in Las Vegas. The 9th one is a company that I called Short-Term Housing Solutions. Now, what's interesting is Airbnb started in 2007, and most of you now know what Airbnb is, and that's, of course, a household name, but you might not know that it started in 2007. So I've been in this business a long time. So there was a time where we used to get a lot of interest for short-term rentals. 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months. All kinds of people need short-term rentals for all kinds of reasons. So as an example, in Arizona, which is where I owned a lot of properties, we have Major League Baseball come each and every year for spring training. So I had contracts with the San Francisco Giants. I had contracts with the Cleveland Indians, and they would come to us because they would want apartments furnished in locations around their spring training facilities. So this was already in play, and so I decided to start a short-term housing company. So let's say the rents were $1,000 a month. I would get the furniture and all the housewares and all the utility component, and I would buy all of those things, and then I would rent them to the San Francisco Giants players, let's say, for $3,000 a month for 2 months. And then, of course, just like Airbnb, we were constantly on the lookout to try to fill those other 10 months on those furnished units. So this company, Short-Term Housing Solutions, at its peak, had somewhere between 200 and 250 units throughout just our properties. And we of course, were the property owners, but we had a whole short-term housing business with people running it and systems and all of that stuff. Now, I just want to do the math with you. If I have 200 units in short-term housing, I'm paying my property $1,000 and I'm charging $3,000. That's a $2,000 a month profit, not including, of course, all the expenses. So 200 units at $3,000 a month is $600,000. Now, $1,000, let's say, would go to the property. So I would pay $200,000 to the property, but that would leave $400,000 a month for the short-term housing company. We were constantly trying to find people to rent those units during the off season, let's say, just using the Major League Baseball as an example. Point is, this company, Short-Term Housing Solutions, was actually generating hundreds of thousands of dollars a month each and every month. And so it was producing in the millions each year. It was really producing during the times of what we call high season. And then, of course, we would actually lose a little bit of money in the summer. But it was very different business because it's now almost in the hotel business. It's not your long-term passive rental business. It's more transactional. At the height, I owned like 250 units of furniture. I had warehouses full of mattresses and couches and lamps and all that stuff. I had guys helping. I had trucks moving all the stuff just like a moving company. And it was a lot of work from a logistics standpoint. And then my partner Ross and I just decided to wind it down after about 10 years. But during that period, it did very, very, very well. It provided a great niche, but we just decided to get back to our core business. It provided a lot of cash flow. It employed a lot of people, and it put millions of dollars in our pocket. If I would have just stayed with it, maybe I would have been the next Airbnb. But I did it first. The 10th one is, of course, the billboard story, which a lot of you guys know. So now I've owned lots of different billboards, but I always try to find what's called a static billboard. A static billboard is a two-sided billboard. If you think about it, it's just a pole in the air with 2 ads on each side. That's called a static billboard. And sometimes these billboards are in the ground for years. They could be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So what's happening is the industry is being replaced with digital, just like everything. Just like we're all seeing, technology is taking over. So for the longest time, I was buying static billboards, two-sided billboards. Now, why would I do that? Because I could buy a static billboard that had 2 ads, replace it with digital, and of course, I would have 8 times more revenue because each side is 8 ads or 16 ads total for a two-sided billboard versus 2. So my revenues were going up. So I would buy static billboards, I would replace them with digital faces, and then I would hire a management company to actually run the ads on them. And those billboards were extremely profitable. They had a lot of passive income and a lot of cash flow, but just by replacing them from a static to a digital, I was able to do this repeatedly over and over and over. One in particular case, I bought a billboard for 250 grand. I spent about another 250 to put a new digital face on each side. So I was into the whole deal for about 500 grand. And then I sold it to a very large national outdoor advertising company for about 1.6 million in about 2 years. So that's another way that we had about a $500,000 investment and we sold it for 1.6, or we made $1 million just on one transaction over a period of time. And again, all I did was look for a static, replace it with a digital, and sell it to a big national company for over $1 million profit. Of course, these are just 10 ways in real estate primarily, because that's essentially what I do full time. But as you guys also know, I'm invested in lots of different things. Like,
I think we're gonna end it here. So what I'm getting from this, I would say 90% of the way he's making money based on this video have to do with real estate. And he tried to control the whole process basically. He doesn't have to wait on the renovation he doesn't have to wait on the renovation company because he owned his own renovation company. He owned his own, like, everything, the properties from A to Z basically. So he controlled the entire process, which I think it's amazing. It's amazing. And last but not least, advertisement is pretty big. So yeah, when he talked about the billboard, I knew, I'm like, yeah, because I live in Miami and advertisement is pretty big. The moment you get on the highway, or to the moment you get off the highway, you go downtown, you enter Brickell, South Beach, everything is advertisement. You can't move without seeing some type of thing that's trying to catch your eyes or trying to reel in your attention basically. So yes, advertisement is pretty big. So I'm gonna end this video here. If you have anything you want to comment. If you have anything you want to say to me. I know these videos are not the best or the perfect vid, but I'm just trying. I'm just starting out. Let me know. Talk to you soon.